the Gin's Treasure. I realized that I promised you guys a video, at least one video every week, and I kind of got distracted. I did do some lives, some podcasts, but it doesn't really have anything to do with the art aspect of the Gin's Treasure. If you know my channel as well as I do, you know that there's the mental health and the how to content create, in addition to primarily what I do, which is the art, the jewelry, the wire wrapping, and as well the resin. So I don't have a wire wrapping video that I'm going to do for you guys today, but I am going to do a little resin video. I hope that satiates any desire to watch me on video, I guess. So I'm kind of in the middle of some projects, and as I look around, I'm getting organized. And so as you can see, I have, like for example, I have this pyramid that's gonna be with the scrap wire. So actually I should grab some scrap wire that I plan to dump some more in there. I have this half dome, and then on the inside is seashells, and I've used some blue dye as well. And then I have this skull mold, and I filled up the skull mold with halfway already, which is straight resin, so it's just blank. And then now I'm gonna do the base of it with some crystals inside. So I don't know if you saw, but I've got some green quartz, some amethyst, some lepidolite, and I believe that's either calcite or selenite. Some very cool stuff. And I've just used up all of the Epoxy B, and it looks like, or it feels like, I have more of the Epoxy A left over, which is not unusual. I would say I had an ounce of the Epoxy B, and now I'm gonna just pour all of this all the way in and then see how much it is. So already I can see it's over an ounce, about an ounce and a half, and it's still pouring. So we'll see when it's done pouring how much is in there, and I'm just gonna try it out. I'm gonna mix that up, so it's gonna be like a disproportionate, maybe 2 to 1. Generally for epoxy resin, you want to do a 1-to-1 ratio of both the A and B, but I'm gonna try it out doing 2A to the ratio of 1B, and we'll just see. I did do, the reason why I want to experiment with this is because I did do one in the past. In fact, it was on the last end of the containers for the last batch of the BSREZN that I use. And it was an uneven portions. I just poured it anyway, just out of curiosity to see what would happen. Pardon me while I grab a mixing stick. And it came out really cool. It didn't fully harden, but it wasn't a mess. It wasn't sticky. So it completely solidified into kind of like a plasma state. So, and what it was actually one of these skull molds, and it was like a squish toy. So it was really interesting experiment, and I would say it was a success. The only thing is that I didn't document it well, so I don't remember exactly how I made it. It was either disproportion more A or more B. So this is going to be a trial using more A, and hopefully we get lucky again and everything comes out great, and it solidifies, it's a plasma, it's squishy. But I'm realizing actually if I do that, then I can't use it for these projects that I'm halfway through. So I'm gonna move those over and set those aside, and then focus on a new project, which I don't think I'll even want to use this cube for. I had an intention with this cube that I would replace a broken wire frame, broken wire wrap frame, and I would drop that in there, and it's kind of like a memento or something, kind of like just really more so something for me, if anything. But I'm not going to do that because I'm doing the experimental resin with the disproportionate increments. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to grab that little mini skull mold again, and then we're going to go round 2 on this thing. All right, so with the skull mold, the little skull mold, we also have some dyes. I have some lake green, and by the way, this is SIG1 is the brand of epoxy resin, and I'm satisfied with it. It's my first time trying with the dyes, and I would say SIG1 is a good starter pack. I don't know enough to know what the good quality or the difference between the good quality and high quality are, but I did get quite an array of colors. I've got some grapefruit, some yellow, some orange yellow. Like I said, that's the lake green. I even have some black here, and that's just what was left out from past resin pieces. I really have like this whole pack, this whole assortment of different options. But without further ado, I think let's get into it. And I'm trying to think for a squishy toy. I think grapefruit would be the move. Maybe well, let's try some grapefruit and some black. Maybe even a little hint of yellow. Well, let's go for it. So this yellow, I gotta clip off the top, because this one I haven't used yet, so it's still sealed. So just with my little pliers, my little clipper pliers here, and then I drop that tip in the trash. And then I'll drop the yellow resin. And in my experience working with the dyes and these skulls, I noticed that it's generally when I drop the dye just straight in there, it doesn't fill evenly. It kind of like for whatever reason, the dye kind of like swims towards the face side, leaving that rounded back of the skull to be kind of blank or empty as far as color. And then we'll drop some. I drop some yellow in. I drop 2 drops in, and then I'm gonna drop some black. Just like we don't need a lot of black. Some resin in, but before I pour it, I do want to mix it up. I only mix it like you saw me mix it. It wasn't really that well mixed. I want to be mixing for, I mean, they recommend for a really good mix of the resins, you want to be mixing for like 8 minutes, but nobody really has that amount of time. Or maybe they do. Maybe they do. Maybe they have the patience, but I don't. And I would say aside from the patience, I also lack the attention span. I mean, for me, I'll be mixing this for as long as I can talk to you until I run out of things to talk about, and then I'll be like, all right, well, in that case, I'll be ready to move on to the next step. So, one thing as far as like my mixing technique, though, I will share is that I use the point of the stick to get to like the edges of the rim. So I circle around the edges, and then I start to spiral inwards, getting towards like the center. So coming around the outside, and then as I circle around, I start to close smaller circles and smaller circles all the way to the point, the middle point. And then the other thing that I do, once I do that, then I switch it up and I try to use the flat angle of the popsicle stick and just scrape around the sides, but on the inside, scraping, making sure that all gets mixed up. And then the other thing too is to make sure that what I'm doing with the stick is just using the flat part of the top of the cup and using that to scrape the flat part of the stick and make sure that like any of the residue that's on the stick is also getting mixed in and it's not a disproportionate balance. Well, it wouldn't be, except for that we intentionally made it a disproportionate balance. Yeah, all right, so without further ado, let's pour some red. So it's really cool, the black and the yellow have merged and it's turned into like this cool bumblebee design, almost like a bumblebee jasper, for those who are familiar with the jasper if you're into crystals, which if you're watching this channel probably you are. So I'm going to pour just a little bit of that in, and it's pretty mixed up in there. Now what I'm going to do is take that grapefruit and do 1 drop, 2 drops towards the front, and then pour a little bit more resin in. And as I pour, I try to pour it in such a way that it like, the way that it drips on directly onto the dye. In fact, I wish I could, probably next time I do a resin video, what I'll do is try to get the camera angle so you could see directly in and have like a bird's eye view and see what I'm doing. But basically, because I don't want to lift up my resin and disrupt that swirl, that artistic swirl that the drip has created. But that's the idea, is that I pour it strategically to create a design or a swirl. Like here, for example, if you look at the swirl of the blue on the dye, you can see how it's not like evenly proportioned. There's like squiggles in there and such, and that has to do with not only the way that I poured the resin over on top of the dye, but then I later took like a little scrap, some scrap wire or something to just kind of stir it up and stir it in such a way that I try to get a like cool design or swirl. And one thing that I'm kind of like playing around with is doing just that, like a swirl where I start around the edges and then spiral, just like how I was saying with the mixing up, starting around the edges and then getting smaller and smaller circles. And what I'm talking about is smaller and smaller circles as I do the pour. So it would be like starting at the edges and then as I go around, getting smaller and smaller until I make it to where the pour is right in the middle. I don't really like the way it looks, to be honest. I think that my choice of colors is could be better, but rather than back down, I'm just gonna go full creation mode and accept that this is potentially like something that I'm gonna have to call a loss by dropping in some more color and more dye and overcompensating. So we'll mix those in. I'm just gonna drop the resin like right on top of those, and they didn't really do much. Those 2 drops, they kind of just blew up into like bigger orbs. And what I'm thinking, what I would want to do is take like I said, one of these mixing sticks and just kind of swirl that around so it creates some kind of a design. And in fact, the other thing that I wanted to mention too about these skulls is that it's been my experience that I don't fill the skull, I don't fill the resin all the way up to the base here, or the brim of the resin mold. I've actually been stopping at like the first line of teeth, and I think in my opinion, those skulls, they come out looking more realistic. Or like if you were to find a skull, not that anybody finds skulls out in nature, that would be horrifying to find a human skull. But generally, like if you find animal skulls or something, you're not gonna find the jaw attached, right? So I feel like it gives it a different edgy look if you only fill up the resin, because the resin's coming from the top, right? So as you pour, you're coming down towards the jawline. And then if you stop just at the top teeth and you don't pour anymore, then you miss out on that bottom jaw. But it's like, it's more realistic. You know what I'm saying? I hope you do. Hard to ask you a question when you can't talk back, right? but you could drop a comment. I would appreciate that. Drop a like. Even a subscription is always appreciated. We're just you know, the artists, entrepreneurs out here doing it. Doesn't matter who's listening or who's not. We're doing it because we do it, because we love it. Alright, well, I would say that's about it for right now. I might just put this video on pause and come back in a few hours and then get the camera rolling, and then we'll just check in and see what's going on with the resin. One thing to do though, if you are pouring resin at home and you're using the epoxy A and B, be mindful that it is a good idea to come back periodically, like maybe every 30 minutes or so, and just check on your resin, because the bubbles will rise to the surface, and that's your opportunity to pop them. You want to pop those bubbles before it solidifies, otherwise they solidify as bubbles and then your resin piece is not going to look as good. So that's your little tip of the day. We'll be back. Alright, welcome back. So off camera I did decide to pour up, since I had enough to do one more or two more resin pours. So I poured up this, it's kind of like a dish, almost like a mixing dish or like some kind of small jewelry tray or perhaps. And this one is just a fun little turtle. Now I have fingers crossed, I do hope that, optimistically I'm hoping that I did get the mix right, that it was majority A. And so here we go, the final reveal. And I'm pulling the cap back on this jewelry tray to start, which has proven to be quite difficult. But alas, here we are. Pop that back into place. Alright, so we've got our jewelry tray, and it is a little bit flexy, so that is an interesting side note there, which would only conclude that this skull here is a squishy skull. So let's reveal the skull. Pretty dark, I would say. I think that the black just dominated everything. There was also some, as I recall, the grapefruit and some yellow. And by the way, this is 20. It's been 24 hours since I poured the resin on camera there. And so this is how the skull came out. And I like how it shows the teeth here and that it's cut off the jawline. If I had another skull around, I could show you something to compare, but all my skulls are in the shop. Forward table. Alright, so the skull is cool. And finally we have just a fun little turtle, nothing special about it, except for that it's a little bit flexy as well. So you can see, well, let's see. You can see how it kind of flexes a little bit. I don't want to push too hard because I don't want to break it. But you can see there's a little bit of a bubbly lack of clarity. But I would say all in all, that's more so because of the time that I spent mixing the two. I think that it's important to not only mix it for a good amount of time, but after you mix it, let it settle for a bit of time before you're ready to pour it, actually. That's one little side tip there. So, alright, that's what we've got for today, and I gotta get going. Exciting things in the big city of Chicago. Peace.